surely the job of investors is to make money for their institutions, not to parade their political opinions.
Jacob, it's nice to see you again. Look, we're talking about educational institutions. Educational institutions, by definition, are concerned about the future. They're concerned about the long run, right? The students who are at Cambridge right now could live into the 22nd century. What's the world going to be by that time? Well, what we hope, of course, is that it will be a world where the climate's been brought under some kind of control and things aren't spiraling into a worse and worse situation. But it will only be like that if there is a massive shift that everybody needs to take part in to ensure that our future, that our kids have that kind of future, that the people who are students now get to have a future. So that's why it makes total sense for universities to have this kind of policy.
Well, does it? Because they have to exist as institutions. They need to be able to fund their activities. They need to get their investments right to make sure that they maintain their financial viability and their fiduciary duty to their institution to invest wisely, not to invest on something that is essentially political. And you have a political view about what is needed for climate change, with which I may well disagree.
Well, you call it political. What we try to do in the Climate Majority Project is bring people together, a wide variety of people, including notably quite a number of Conservatives, such as Lord Deeben, the former chair of the Climate Change Committee, to say, actually, the vast majority of citizens are now aware, at least to some extent, of the kind of deep trouble that we are in and the much deeper trouble that we are getting into. So it's not actually about politics fundamentally, right? When we don't have insulation on our houses, we're just heating the sky. A third of British roofs have no insulation in them. That's part of what you call the net zero agenda. It's just common sense, Jacob.
Well, I'm all in favour of keeping my energy bills down, and that's people can do that for themselves. That is perfectly possible to ensure you keep your energy bills down by putting in insulation, and there are schemes to help people with limited resources. But that's not the same as an investment. That's not the same as an investment policy that ought to be dealing with the reality as it is, and that in an investment policy, of course, you have long-term objectives, but you also have short-term opportunities. I mean, if you'd bought BP in the middle of 2020, when oil was below zero briefly, you'd have made an absolute fortune in a couple of years. And investment policies need to take into account.
It's not about a moral crusade, Jacob. It's about having a future. You talk about the prices of the fossil fuel shares. Actually, they've been tracking well below market rates over the last decade. It makes total sense for universities to invest in the future. Students want their future invested in. That's why these kinds of policies that Cambridge and other universities have brought in now are very popular. And I've actually played a small part in those kind of campaigns myself.
Okay,
and they've been
one final point, because I've got to move on. If these investments are so good, they'll make them anyway without needing this policy.
Look, Jacob, the question is, do you want to be confident that you're going to have a future, or do you want to gamble on only having short-term economic returns that don't deliver you a world in which we can be confident that our children will grow up?
I'll allow you the last word. Thank you for joining me again, Rupert. Hope you'll come back on in future.